So the other day, I was sitting in my basement just thinking about D&D, kind of like I always do in my spare time. I started wondering to myself, who would win in the fight, a dragon or a beholder? Both two iconic creatures in D&D. So naturally, I did the one thing any sane person would do. Spent the entirety of my next week learning how to simulate a fight between the two of them to figure out who would actually win. So, being the stubborn individual that I am who has zero prior knowledge of coding or anything similar, I sat down with the one program that I did have at least a basic amount of knowledge about. And that also happens to be one of the most hated programs in all of existence, Microsoft Excel. Anyways, I added all of the stats for the creatures into the Excel sheet and off to the races I went. Until I remembered that my understanding of Excel consisted of mostly making pretty colors in the cells to make fun pictures and no actual formula knowledge. So I stood up, ran to my room, cried a little bit, fell asleep, woke up the next morning, forgot entirely about this project until about 2 days later when I was looking through my YouTube scripts folder. So then, I sat back down with a renewed vigor, watched tutorial after tutorial until I finally had enough of understanding to realize I'm not going to remember any of this, and then pretty much sat down and looked it up as I went. Anyways, I finally set off on the actual project. So with the story out of the way, before we get into this, everything that I have set up in this table has some assumptions about the fight that are important to know. These assumptions are things like, neither creature will utilize a lair action because 1, neither of these creatures would likely find each other in their lairs anyways, and 2, I don't know how to code those. 2, the creatures will start within melee range of each other, mostly because this doesn't actually matter since the beholder's movement speed is only 20 and the dragon's flight speed is 80, so the dragon could always technically get in range of the beholder. 3, the dragon did not start with its breath weapon. It needed to roll a recharge on a 1, I believe, before utilizing it. That's an important assumption because that actually might change the outcome of some of this information, which is why I have this whole thing as a plus or minus 2% in the overall outcomes. 4, the dragon's breath weapon, if it recharges it, always uses it and always uses average damage. And 5, if the dragon fails a save on its first turn, it's automatically going to succeed that save on its next turn. This is another thing that could very much drastically affect the outcome of the simulation, but I feel like with the legendary resistances, it wouldn't be too hard to figure out if a dragon would choose to succeed something like a petrification ray so it doesn't automatically lose the fight. So obviously, it's not going to be a perfect simulation, which is why I'd say this is probably a plus or minus 2% like I mentioned earlier. Now, let's get to the actual information. Beholders have an AC of 18, and dragons have an attack bonus of plus 11, meaning that in order to hit a beholder, the dragon would only need to roll a 7. That means that any given attack made by the dragon has a 65% chance to hit the beholder, assuming it doesn't have some sort of condition already affecting it. The beholder, on the other hand, uses 3 eye rays on its turn, and each ray has a 10% chance of being used at any given point in time. The tricky part about this was that each eye ray utilizes different saving throws, so I had to code those in for every save that the dragon has to make. Without getting too into the numbers and too bogged down in the details, let's look at exactly how a beholder could realistically kill a dragon, because there's actually potentially 2 win conditions. 1, the beholder reduces the dragon to 0 hit points. Pretty obvious, right? But the second one is the dragon fails 2 petrification ray saves. Now, unlikely as that is, it is possible, so I need to bring it up. So, as far as the beholder win conditions are concerned, there are 4 eye rays that are important. Enervation ray, disintegration ray, and death ray for the damage, and then the petrification ray for the potential turning to stone. 3 of those eye rays utilize a dex save, which is convenient as dex is the dragon's worst saving throw. Aside from that, all of the other rays use con saves, wisdom saves, dex saves, and strength saves, each with a DC of 16. So let's look at the dragon's stats. It has a plus 11 to con saves, so it's probably going to make most of those, a plus 6 to wisdom and strength saves, and a plus 5 to dex saves. So the most important save here is probably going to be the dex saving throw, since 3 of the 4 eye rays that are part of the win conditions for the beholder utilize those saves. And since the dragon only gets a plus 5, it needs to roll an 11 or higher in order to succeed. meaning at any given time, the dragon has a 50% chance to pass or fail on any of these saves, and thereby resist the effects or take half damage, not including legendary resistances. Considering the Beholder uses 3 eye rays on its actions, and then 3 more eye rays for its legendary actions, it's honestly probable that the Beholder will use more than one of those highly important eye rays on any given round. Now, before you yell at me and say that I forgot about the other rays and conditions, I have also calculated those as well. Without going into too much detail, each eye ray has a varied effect or condition that applies to the dragon. For example, if the dragon fails the paralyzation ray, it auto-fails strength and dex saves, meaning that those ever-important win condition rays that we use for dex saves are much more effective. If you're interested in more details about how I did this or information about each of the eye rays, let me know in the comment section below. I might make another video about it, I'm not entirely sure though. Anyways, let's go ahead and jump into the part that everybody wants to hear about, the outcome. I ran 1,000 simulations of a fight between both creatures, keeping track of the percentages every 100 sims or so, and the winner after 1,000 simulations was the big angry eye boy. Surprised? Maybe you shouldn't be just yet. Let's take a closer look at the numbers. The end result was actually a 51% to 49% win rate, which is damn close. Out of 1,000 total fights, the Beholder actually only won 26 more encounters, so when I say damn close, I mean damn close. Not to mention, there's always a chance of variance in some of these numbers. My estimate was there's about plus or minus 2% difference. Now that might come down to just rolls, that might come down to human error in the simulation. I'm not entirely sure. It'll take someone a lot smarter than me to figure that out. Now I have to admit, I thought the dragon would have this entire thing hands down with its extra speed, its consistent damage, and its legendary resistances. But honestly, the more I thought about it, the more and more this outcome started to make sense to me. The Beholder gets 6 eye rays per round, which means the dragon needs to make 6 saving throws on its turn or suffer some sort of negative effect, whether it be a condition or damage. Granted, the dragon can deal consistent damage, but the Beholder can do very well to mitigate damage with conditions it imposes on the dragon. Now with that in mind, let's take a look at the poll I put out a couple of days ago and see how you big-brained boys and girls figured out this outcome. Wow, that's actually a lot of you. I'm really surprised so many people chose the Beholder. Good on you, viewer, you're smarter than me. Not that that's difficult, but congrats. And now that we know the outcome, we come to the last bit, running an actual simulation. This part of the video is where I get into all the nitty-gritty information about how I did this. If you're interested in that, stick around. If not, now is a great time to go ahead and hit that subscribe button or leave a comment about whether you agree, maybe you think I missed something, maybe you just think I'm a big idiot. I don't care, let me know in the comment section below. But if this nerd stuff is your jam, let's go ahead and jump into it. So you see on my screen, we got the pie chart of all of the simulations out of 1,000 sims. The Beholder won 513, of which the Dragon won 487. So you can clearly see that the Beholder has a very slim marginal win over the Dragon. And then you also see a bunch of other colored tiles on my Excel sheet because I like colors. So this all actually started off in this sheet here, the eye roll reference. But let's go to the stats first real quick. This is where I put in all the stats for the Beholder and the Dragon. I averaged out their health, obviously. A little bit of averaging was done with the breath weapon of the Dragon, but aside from that, this is what we have. All of the different actions that the Beholder can take, the 1 of 10 different eye rays, its 3 legendary actions, which is another 3 eye rays, the eye ray % chance of being used for the save associated with any of them, and then same thing with over here on the Dragon, we have the frightful presence, the damaging things that it can do with the bite, the claws, the breath, its saving throw, additionals or saving throw modifiers, and the legendary actions that it can do. So I took all of this information here, and the first thing I did was we had to go through the Beholder part, because this is going to be pretty much the entire coding, the entire formula, right? Because there's 1 in 10 chance of any chosen eye ray being used, 3 being used per round. So this all started with this right here. Essentially a random number generator between 1 and 10 for each eye roll. You can see here I have the first round, the second round, the third round, the fourth round, the fifth round, the sixth round, the seventh round, and the 8th round. If this went longer than 8 rounds of combat, probably a problem. But essentially, the first eye ray that the beholder chose on its first turn was 9. And then I took all of these numbers and I associated an eye ray with them. So if we look at 9, we can go back to these stats here, and we can see that 9 was a disintegration ray. So the first ray that the beholder used on that turn was a disintegration ray. And then we can go through these other cells here and take a look at what that means. So if I go to the beholder actions page, we can see there's a lot of information. But let's start off. So I re-rolled the tables a couple times, and this is what we got. In the first round of combat, the beholder chose a death ray first, meaning that the first eye beam it chose was death, and I can look at any of these tables to take a look. This cell in this table represents this cell in this table, this cell in this table, this cell in this table, and so on and so forth. And each of these tables are different outcomes or different saves, right? So this is the chosen eye beam table. This is the damage table if the dragon was going to take damage. This is the wisdom or strength saving throw table because it has a 45% chance of succeeding. This is a con saving table. This has 20% chance of succeeding, and the dex save table, which is a 50% chance of succeeding. So if we go through this whole thing, we can take a look at the death ray. I believe a death ray requires a dex saving throw, as you can see here by the save needed for the damage eye ray. We can then come on down to the dex save table and see that the dragon rolled an 11, which fails the saving throw needed to succeed on not taking damage or half take damage. And then we can see the outcome down here in that cell for the outcome table and see that the death ray, the dragon failed its save and it dealt 54 damage to it. Likewise, the third ray that happened was also a death ray, requiring a dex save. It rolled a 46, failing its save, thereby taking 63 points of damage. Now, this is very similar for all of the conditional effects. You can see that there's Charmed, Unconscious, Frightened, and so on and so forth. So if we go to the Charm down here for the legendary action on the second round, we can see that the Charm actually requires a Wisdom saving throw. We can then come to the Wisdom saving throw table, see that the dragon rolled a 27, which is less than what it needed for the success rate, meaning that the outcome of this means the dragon is charmed. Now, obviously for combat, charm doesn't really matter, but that's just an example of how the saving throws would work in this table setup. So let's take a look at the dragon's actions, right? Each of these tables represents a round of combat for the dragon. They each have the actions the dragon can take and the legendary actions. Now, how I had this set up is if the dragon had the breath weapon available, it would always opt to use it. So what I did here was I can see that it's got the frightful presence, the bite, claws, and the breath. If the dragon rolled a 1 on a d6, it would have its breath weapon and then utilize it. I know it says a 6 in the player's handbook, monster manual, whatever. I had a 1, same odds, it is what it is. So we can see that the dragon rolled a 2, meaning that it did not recharge its breath weapon, meaning that it was null and void, so it rolled its attacks instead. You can see that the frightened effect did go through as the beholder failed as frightened, but unfortunately for the dragon, doesn't mean much for beholder since all of its damage is saving throws. It missed its bite attack here, it missed its claw attack here, and we can see the numbers that it rolled. And we can see that the third claw did in fact hit, dealing 12 damage. We can also see that after its turn, the legendary action for a tail attack did connect for 22 damage as well. We can come over here to the outcome table and see that during the action round, it did 12 damage. During its legendary action options, it had 22 damage, and then for the total outcome of damage, it did 34. And then we can see for the rest of these, the outcome, 53, 21, etc., how that goes. Now that we have all of this information here, let's go take a look at the outcome table. Now everything culminates in this Excel sheet right here. We have all of the beholder actions, we have all of the dragon actions, and we have all of the beholder outcomes and dragon outcomes, right? Now how this works is I kind of put all the important tables in one sheet just to kind of calculate it all. The beholder actions, as you probably already guessed, like the other table, has all the outcomes. First ray was frightened, second ray was charmed, and so on and so forth. We can see all those outcomes. The dragon actions, we can see all the action total damage, or the breath weapon total damage, and the legendary action damage. Now, unfortunately, this was a very bad round for everyone, as only the dragon was able to do 22 damage with a legendary action. And then even the second round, the beholder failed to do anything, and the dragon did pull up another 48 damage. So, bad rounds for the beholder definitely to start off with. But if we then take a look over here, we can see all the outcomes for the rounds. So this is round 1, the legendary round, the round 2, legendary round 2, and so on and so forth. And you can see we have the dragon's HP and the beholder HP. So, round 1, dragon didn't take any damage. Same thing for the Beholder. Beholder didn't take any damage. However, round 2, Dragon still didn't take any damage, but the Beholder took a little bit of damage here. And it just built out like that. And then I can finally see if it's below 0, it's red, meaning that the Dragon successfully killed the Beholder on round 5. I can then come on down here, pop up my Dragon Wins tick right there, and we're good to go. Now, in the event of a tie, what I did was I essentially added initiative, right? It's difficult to equate or to quantify initiative in Excel. At least I couldn't figure out how to do it easily. So if there was a tie where both of them killed each other on the same round of combat, essentially it came down to an initiative check to see who would move first. What I did was I took a % chance of a Dragon going first or the Beholder going first, put that to a number between 1 and 100, and essentially if they rolled above that certain number, that creature goes first. So the Dragon goes first in this scenario, meaning that the Dragon would have killed the Beholder first, putting this win for a Dragon. And that's pretty much how it went. And as far as the outcome is concerned, we can take a look at all of the simulations here. I'll actually zoom in a bit, and it's probably not good. You know, I'm just gonna look at me move. We can start to see actually all the simulations. So out of 100 sims, the Beholder was actually behind about 3%, and the Dragon was winning. But the more and more sims we go through, the Beholder starts to pick up. You see, out of 200 sims, it starts to pull ahead. 300 sims, it pulls ahead. 400 sims, the same exact percentage, and so on and so forth. Until eventually, we get to 1,000 sims, where it's 51 to 49%, which is pretty damn close. So, overall, this was a very, very difficult task for me to try and get through, and honestly, I learned a whole shit ton about Excel, and quite honestly, I don't want to do it again, and probably would learn to code rather than having to do this all over again. But then again, I did kind of choose the hardest possible creatures, seeming as how a Beholder has 1 out of 10 chances for any eye raise with different saves and all that. It was crazy. But anyways, that's how I did it all. Definitely not the easiest way of going about it, but for the purposes of what I was doing, it worked pretty well. Okay, so that's all I got, guys. I don't know what to tell you. Out of 1,000 simulations between an adult white dragon and a Beholder, the Beholder wins 51% of the time. So, thank you all very much for watching. This video took a lot longer than any other video I have put together, just from obviously the formulas, the learning, and all that other stuff. So I would really, really appreciate it if you let me know in the comment section down below what you think. You might think it's super cool and awesome and want more. You might think it's stupid and I made a bunch of dumb mistakes. I don't know. Who knows? Let me know. I was considering putting out a video about how I did this. If you're interested in that, let me know. I wasn't really eager to put out a video like that because it's so tedious, but if enough people want it, I will put it out, so there's that. And yeah, just let me know what you guys think of this video, because I did have fun. As much as it looks like pain and misery and suffering, it was, but I did have fun finding this out. I'm a very much big numbers guy, and I like these min-maxing situations, so let me know what you think. I'd really appreciate it, and I might do more in the future. So thank you all very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you on Friday.
She just like oh my god!
Oh no! Oh.
Are you proud of yourself, Pop?
Okay.
Are you proud of yourself?
Oh my god!